Oh, yeah. One more thing. I'm glad you changed your last name, you son of a bitch.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Daily Hotpot. I am your co-host, Drift, aka Sir Robert.
And I'm Khuon. I hope everyone is having a fantastical Thursday morning.
Hope this Thursday is magical, beautiful, and out of this world. And this is very poignant, Khuon, because today we have a very special topic, brother. And this topic is what our dream fantasy setting would be.
Ooh, dream fantasy. Like if we were to transport ourselves somewhere, or are we talking like real life situations?
That is a great question, and I would say we can even give two answers for this, because I actually genuinely have two in the back pocket here. But we can do a dream fantasy setting for like if we were just to create a world and it was going to be like in a book, in video games, movies, franchised. And then we could just do our dream fantasy setting for like, hey, bro, this is a fantasy setting I would love to live in. Which, pick and choose, whichever you want.
Yeah. We'll start off with the quick and easy one. In a dream world, my life would consist of traveling around the world and just eating food and vlogging about it. I wish I became a food vlogger, is what I'm saying.
It's never too late. You can start now.
It is way too late. But that's a whole nother story for another episode where we talk about potential regrets we've had with our career. But we will not dive into that today because that's a crazy, sad episode. Instead, we're going to talk about the happy dream fantasy setting that, potentially I would love to live in. And to start off, so like in Japanese, I guess, pop media or Japanese animation, there's this genre that's called isekai, which I think literally translates to another world. But for the most part, it's a salary man, business guy who's depressed and is going nowhere in life. And all of a sudden he gets hit by a truck or he commits suicide or someone kills him. And then magically, because of some reason, a god from a different world transport his soul into a high fantasy medieval world where they become the hero or they are destined to save this particular world. And it is an incredibly popular genre. And I think it has something to do with like how depressed all Japanese men are with like their current lives, but it's crazy. Yes. Yeah. But I would say that fits what we're talking about right now, where for me, and no spoiler, right? I think it's going to be obvious to everyone that I would love to be able to transport into a medieval fantasy setting. It could be high fantasy, it could be low fantasy, but one of the theme of this genre is that they become an adventurer, which is a literal job where you go out and you do quests on behalf of other people. So your whole life becomes side quests in an RPG where you go up to a bulletin board, you find things to do for the day or the week, and you go do it, and you travel around and you do said things with magic and sword and with friends and friendship along the way. So, yeah, that's pretty good for me. If I don't die, which in a realistic sense and a practical sense, I would probably die immediately, either by like a goblin or I don't know, a disease I contracted somewhere.
Some gnolls, some bad chicken, who knows? Something down the road.
Yeah. Do you remember that one time we played, or rather, we did the Dungeons and Dragons scenario?
Yes, I do.
And one of the first scenario, which is basically a tutorial scenario where you come across a broken down wagon and you get ambushed by 4 to 5 goblins. And, the first episode of this anime is going to be the goblin ambush. And guaranteed, I'm dead. There's just no way. There's just no way. I'll pretend like I know what to do with the sword, and I'll just get stabbed and die from like poison or something.
Give yourself some credit, Khuon. I mean, you might be able to like, hobbit weasel your way out of it. You don't think you'd be a good runner?
Hell no. Because once again, you're transported to a world where it's like it's you, right? Like, what the fuck you gonna do with when monsters all of a sudden attack you? Where in comics or like you know TV shows, magically the hero or the main character knows what to do. Like, nah, we're all dead. We're all dead, guys. You're gonna get stabbed by like I don't know a little green goblin and just die. End of show.
I mean, to be honest, I agree. If I was transported into a fantasy realm, I'd probably die. Like if I wasn't like in the middle of like a village where I could just find some work as a farmer, even then, bro, we could be raided by goblins or bandits or whatever.
Yeah.
I could like accidentally step on the shoe of like a noble and just get my head chopped off. You know, who knows? Like
Mm,
anything can go wrong.
yeah. I think it would be cool to, you know, be a good adventurer and know what you're doing and to, just make a living doing random things. Now, that's just being delusional, right?
Mm.
But since we're talking about dream settings, why not? If my delusions allow me, I would like to live in Skyrim and just become an adventurer.
Now, with this whole fantasy scenario, let's assume that whatever traits or like abilities you wanted, obviously not barring like godhood, but I mean just like, you know, if you wanted to be a blacksmith, you'd be a good one. Like, or if you wanted to be an
Yeah,
adventurer, you'd be a
yeah.
good one. Like in this scenario, you'd be like a world-renowned
It,
adventurer or like a low-key, like you're just a
mm,
local adventurer and you just like to do stuff.
nah. I would love to be a side character.
Mm.
So there's like three scenarios. If I am supposed to be the hero, I would be a paladin. I would be, okay, God has blessed me and I will bless the world with godliness and
Mm.
destroy all evil, right? So, and protect everyone. I will become the shield, so
Ah,
forth, right?
Khan, the
If I was forced to
altruist.
become, yeah, so if I was forced to become the hero, the fantasy trope character would be the paladin. That would be me. However, ideally, I would love to be a blacksmith dwarf where I just live in town, maybe a village, and I just do blacksmith things. That's it. Just chilling. I get to see magic every now and then. Cool if I could do magic. Cool if I could like produce nice armor, nice swords.
Mm.
Yeah. So those are the two, I guess, opposite polar side of what I would like to do.
I gotta say, Khan, this whole dwarf blacksmith fantasy, I mean, you and I already have the height for it. We're just missing the stoutness, though I'm on my way there.
Well, that's the main reason why I picked the dwarf. But it also makes sense because I like watching people do blacksmithing.
Mm.
I've never done it, but it's cool. I like it.
It seems so sick, and a part of me have always wanted to try blacksmithing, but I just know I'd be bad at it. I'd
Nah,
just
I
be.
would be I would be 100% bad at it. Recently, we had to replace literally like a retaining wall on like two steps, right? It took like 2 weeks for me to like figure out what I need to do. It's very simple, but man, I'm just not a handy guy. But once again, delusional, dream fantasy setting, you know, blacksmithing, magic blacksmithing.
Mm. You know what? Yeah, I think that would be up there for me. I guess to flip on my end, or just to really say, Con, I mean, those are like the ideal like layman's fantasy, or not in a bad way, just like if I got
Yeah,
transported
yeah.
to a world, like some people are like, yeah, I'd be like, you know, a knight amongst the king's holdings, or like I would be a fucking noble. It's like, nah, you don't want them problems, bro. Like you just want
No.
like just be like your local blacksmith, your local barkeep or adventurer. You know, even though that's quite dangerous in a fantasy world, but you know, you don't want to be like a guy with higher end problems. Because trust me, you got to deal with higher end shit. And in fantasy, higher end shit means death. I think,
Yep.
you know, you want to be that local blacksmith making horseshoes and horse nails and nails for local village cottages, you know, and that's probably what I would be too. That seems like a nice, simple life. But then you look at a game like Kingdom Come Deliverance and we see what happens to blacksmiths. Not
I
fantasy.
was gonna say, usually those guys are like kind of the first to go, right?
I'm hoping if our village
Wh-
gets invaded, they'll see my
yeah,
value and like, we need a blacksmith though. It's like, all right, keep me
yeah.
around, boys, keep me around. Yeah.
Which is kind of funny because, like, historically, you know, you don't kill blacksmith
Oh
because
yeah.
they're just valuable tradesmen in general.
You tend to not kill many of the tradesmen as much as you can, unless it's like,
No,
you know, either lower end trading that you don't need in times of war or invasion, or Just people that, regardless of their trade, they're too dangerous to keep around as resistance.
Hey, somebody's got to keep those horses shoed, man.
Yeah. Someone needs to sharpen the swords. Everyone needs to make horseshoes. Everyone needs nails. But yeah, those are all great options, Khuon. I'm on a different end, and I guess I'll start with mine on my dream fantasy world if I just like made one, like it got, it got franchised and, it became a bunch of games, books, movies, whatever. And as I mentioned before, that one of my favorite periods in history is of the Napoleonic era. And there's something so fascinating to me about how, to me, like, generally speaking, that was like the last era of like key generals having a very chess-like impact on the battlefield. Of course, it kind of waned into like the American Civil War in those times, especially like the Franco-Prussian War in the late 1800s, middle 1800s. For the most part, the prime time of it was Napoleonic Wars. And that's when generals like Napoleon or, the great kings and emperors of the various different countries, you could legit move around companies of men because they're legit blocks of them on the battlefield. We've changed so much in modern warfare where it's a lot of small arms tactics, but this was the last great era of that. So for me, my ideal fantasy setting was a fictitious low fantasy era where we have gone ahead in time past the days of knights of old and all this stuff, and we've entered the era past where gunpowder is just introduced, and we've gone into a Napoleonic-esque era where guns are like the way to fight. But we're not into automatic or bolt-action rifles of the late 1800s. We're right there where you still gotta load a goddamn musket and fight in line, and and basically this low fantasy setting, there's very little magic. But what I had this idea way back in high school was, in this setting, the way that guns were found wasn't through like gunpowder. Well, it's because in this world, main magic comes from like these 1, 2, or 3, a very low number of wizards that still remain from the old fantastical legendary era of magic. And they have found a way to become rich and manipulate the world by putting magic in the palm of mankind's hand, by developing magic to make guns. Like, guns are fueled by magic, but all the wizards have become corrupt that they basically turned into like money-grubbing warlords that ship and like give weaponry and magic to these various nations and kingdoms to fund their wars so that they can just, they can manipulate and control the world through they're the only way that they can make magic, or the way they manifest like bulletry and all that stuff in ballistics. And yeah, kind of just like a, that sounds very high fantasy, but I don't need dragons, goblins, stuff like that. I think the only magic comes from the existence and reliance on guns. So there's going to be, the classic relics of the old medieval world, like ancient houses, things like that, old traditions. One of the things I still wanted to keep was like, when combining kingdoms or nations to like go against others and forging alliances, one of those old kingdoms still holds on to ancient traditions. So like one of them, even though it's all Napoleonic cavalry and stuff, one of them are still like winged Polish Hussar types who like still hold on to those martial traditions. It's
You know what? That is also historically accurate.
Very.
Didn't they still do that during World War One? They literally just had them running around.
I think
I'm
not
pretty sure
World War
they were still around.
They still had cavalry. I don't think they still had like full armored cavalry like the winged hussars, but I do know the winged hussars.
I'm pretty sure there were instances. It wasn't effective.
Yeah. Whoa.
The Polish were so prideful in their cavalry that they're like, you know what? Let's put on the wings, guys.
And that's what I wanted.
It did work out, man.
But that's the thing. It's like the basis of the winged hussars is like they were in, if I'm not mistaken, an era of heavy cavalry where like, the Swedish kings like Gustav was already doing pike and shot, which is an era of military history where they started fending off cavalry by having dudes in formation with long ass fucking pikes, and then interspersed between them are like muskets. So they were able to like, war was fought like that for a while. But even during that era where like they basically made it hard for cavalry to attack gunmen, that was like the high time for the Polish cavalry, because there was like a little era, right, when cavalry made a comeback. Because once pike and shot happened, cavalry kind of dipped down, but then the Polish hussars were like, nah, bro, fuck it, we'd win. Just keep on doing it.
It's pretty effective until it's not, unfortunately.
Yeah.
When it comes to technology, right? Effective until it's not. I think that was like the same way even like during the later medieval times, where the crossbowmen still used the shields or even pikes to kind of like get the cavalry's kind of like back off. Same, the gun didn't change that. It was just that eventually the gun was able to overpower any type of armor.
Gun got better, and therefore,
Yeah.
yeah.
Although it would be interesting if, let's say, Nation A was led by a wizard that was super proficient in defense arts,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
whereas Nation B, it's all about impactful, powerful magic that makes projectiles super crazy.
Mm.
Maybe the defense guys were still using knights because they can, right? Because they can.
Dude, so you're literally like have the perfect idea for shit like this. Because I was talking about like each wizard has a specialty in what they can manufacture. Because I don't want these wizards to
Yeah.
be in like classic pointy hats. Like they're like wizards that like have survived these eras of fantasy, but like again, they basically have become like warlords and war
Hmm.
manufacturers. And yeah, like, oh, that's such a sick idea. Like someone has like a defensive wizard who can make armor.
Yeah.
He can't make a lot of it at once because it takes power and energy to make such armors, but there's enough armor that
Mm.
can't that most other nations can't penetrate, and they still have like a faction or a regiment of knights that can just literally walk up to enemy lines and just start kicking ass. Like
Yeah,
imagine
yeah,
the
yeah.
sight of that.
That would
That's
be
so sick.
that that would be very cool. And just because it's a movie or a TV show, there needs to be a main character. And it usually has to be a relatable,
Yeah.
character
Yeah.
for the audience. So it'll probably be a boy or girl where their town or village gets destroyed. And some reason, somehow, he manifests his ability to use a different magic.
Mm.
Mm,
Like
mm,
he's got a magic outside of the wizard's control. It's like, whoa, hold on.
and now he has to navigate through how other people value his magic.
And then he has to navigate like the politics of the warring nations and all that. And who knows, maybe he gets
Yeah.
confronted by another wizard. And it's like, oh, look, guys, it's happening. It's
Yeah.
it's funny. This reminds me is that when I was thinking about like I even looked up, I think like a year ago, I was like, who has anyone like found the Napoleonic era or even a similar era of history, a ripe era for fantasy? And I looked it up. There's one author, at least an author that's has at least the most success. I'm forgetting her name. I guess she's a fictional historian or historian who writes fiction rather. And she has made essentially like fictional history where it's based in our Napoleonic era history, but she literally just threw in dragons. Like, and I'm not. That's not to downplay it. To make it sound dumb. It's like straight up what it is that these nations now have like are just on top of literally just took Napoleonic history and said, well, how would history be effective if each nation had dragon riders? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I haven't read it. I actually really want to read them. I haven't. Yeah, I haven't ordered them yet. I really should now. Now that they've come in my mind again. But yeah, no really other
Yeah. I
fiction of the era in fantasy. Everything has been either historical fiction, like writing like a soldier story of the time with a fake character, but nothing
mm,
utilizing the tech and the warfare of the era within a false fictionalized fantasy setting. And I think I don't know, that's on the bucket list.
yeah. It reminds me of Rain of Fire. I love that movie, by the way. Do you know
Which
it?
one's Rain of
With Matthew
Fire?
McConaughey and Christian Bale. It was the original Game of Thrones dragons. That's where those dragons came from. The origin of the Game of Thrones dragons.
Is it
Whereas
rain
a
like royal
movie,
rain or like rain like rain
yeah,
rain?
Royal Reign,
Okay.
like Reign of Dragons. So what happens is the dragons were hibernating under the earth. Something happened and they came back. They became the scourge and wiped out humanity. And now the movie itself is set post war. And what happens during the height of the dragons, where the humans are now prey. And it takes place in modern time.
Yeah, I'm looking at
So,
it now. I was like, what's going
yeah,
on? Why are
guns and all
there?
that.
Okay, gotcha. So
Yeah. And
post
those dragons,
apocalypse, but
yeah.
dragons.
Hmm. Yeah.
Interesting.
Very cool. Very cool.
Is the
Takes
movie
place in
good?
castles and stuff like that. I liked it. Very
Okay,
good. But I was also a kid, right?
let's see.
But what's
Okay.
interesting is the anatomy of those CGI dragons and how they behave and moved was all original, and then they became the basis of how the modern CGI dragon looked and moved today, and how they breathe fire.
Well, I'm looking at some of these
OG dragons.
dragons, and they designed it to have the winged arm dragon rather than the separated wings that like most like European
Yeah,
Western
they're
dragons.
wyverns. They're
The
wyverns. Yeah,
wyverns, right? Yeah. Okay.
and that's why we have wyverns, sadly, instead of actual dragons. it's like their fault why wyverns are now dragons, but it's also they made dragons really cool and terrifying. So,
Could we describe? Could you go ahead and describe to the people the difference between a wyvern drake and a dragon? Because I'm sure people are like, "What do you mean wyvern dragon?"
I mean, a drake historically is a lizard horse with wings. A wyvern is just I don't know, a lizard with arms as wings. If you think of a bat, but as a lizard.
Mhm.
And a dragon is a dinosaur with a long neck that have a third pair of arms that act as the wings, if that makes
Oh,
sense.
is it
I
a
don't
third
know.
pair of arms?
Well,
I thought it was just a quadruped like dragon lizard, but they have like a
they
separate set of
have,
wings
yeah,
on their
yeah,
back that aren't arms.
yeah. I mean,
Okay.
they're technically
I
arms,
guess so. Yeah, yeah,
but
you're right. Yeah, yeah.
it's the third limb. I don't know how to describe it, but yeah,
I get what you mean. Yeah, yeah. And then you have the Asian serpent dragon as a whole separate anatomy of fictitious
yeah,
creatures.
yeah. Those have a Western equivalent. I forget the name of it though.
Man, this is
But yeah,
slowly turning into the anatomy of
I actually,
dragons.
I do know my dragons actually. Yeah, there's always like a bunch of subcategories for the Chinese dragons too,
Oh, I'm
in
sure.
particular. Yeah, yeah.
Frankly, I lack the
And
knowledge,
then
but perhaps this is something you can
yeah,
enlighten us on in the future.
I mean, we can talk about just leviathans in
Oh
general,
man,
which I mean that's where dragons came from, man. Leviathans, where
biblically, yeah.
sea monsters, yeah, slowly became angels or dragons. It's like a whole sort of like artistic rendering, I guess. Telephone. It's like think about it as like the telephone game
Hmm.
where everyone describes something and they picture it a different way, and eventually sea monsters, leviathans became dragons.
Well, ain't that just like history in a nutshell? And also just like
Hmm.
combined history, but like stories and tradition are history too. So that's just everything in a nutshell. Someone tells something how it looks, and someone goes, "Yeah, looks like that, right?" And they go, "Yeah, I guess so." Man.
Yeah, I mean, like, are you a Final Fantasy fan? I guess.
So that's the thing. My brother is a humongous Final Fantasy fan, but I never got into it because whenever I see him played as a kid, I was like, that looks daunting.
Yeah.
So I never, yeah, I'm surprisingly not a Final Fantasy guy.
Yeah, so in the game, there are summons, like monsters or gods that you can summon, and one of them is a big old dragon, like scary kaiju-like dragon, Leviathan. But historically, a Leviathan is just a big fish, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it's funny.
Oh man, that could be a whole separate episode of talking like about fictional creatures or like
Oh,
legendary creatures through history,
I would love to talk about mythical creatures
dude.
because I'm a big Greek history and myth guy, and I obviously like fantasy stuff, so I'm down.
Okay, guys, future episode. Who knows? Maybe next week. You guys will see it.
But
But
going back to your not steampunk, your Napoleon era, there are a couple of recommendations. I don't know if you'll be interested, but
mhm.
because they're all anime.
Ah, okay.
There's an old anime called Steam Boy where it
Steam
takes
Boy.
place in Victorian era, and it's the most steampunk, very accurate steampunk setting where everything is just run on Steam. And it's around a boy who discovers a new method of steam. So, and there's like lots of action, a lot of really creative use of steam powered machinery, which you might find interesting.
I mean, it
And
looks
the
kind of dope
second
from the pictures I'm looking at.
yeah, yeah. Like it's a good era too because it's around like the aviation, like early aviation Victorian era,
Yeah, yeah.
but around like steampunk technology and steampunk aesthetic, which is really cool.
Are
But it's
those
not
knights
like
with repeating crossbows?
you will see, man. I think you'll like it. I'll give you ideas for sure.
I
I
mean,
think you'll like it.
it looks really dope to be honest.
Yeah. And then there's a anime. I would only watch like the first two episodes that's relevant to you.
Mhm.
It's called Gate, like Gate. It's not the best looking anime. It's pretty
Gate.
old.
Gates
Yeah.
anime.
Yeah. So it revolves around a gate that opens up between modern Japan and Game of Thrones.
Oh, I've seen clips of this way long
Ye-
ago. Way long ago.
yeah. So what happens when a modern army face against a high fantasy medieval army? with dragons and armor, and think about it as like Roman style armor. They get destroyed, obviously.
Yeah,
But
I
you'll
think I
get to
remember
see,
seeing
you'll
that
get to
clip.
see, yeah, you'll get to see how they get destroyed, and it's really cool.
Would I be just chill watching the clips, like highlights of the battles? Because I'm sure that's where all the meat and potatoes are in terms of like inspiration. Or do you think the story
The first two episodes
context
are pretty good.
amongst the story? Okay, so you think the whole context of the episode is best?
You could do either.
Okay,
To be honest,
you're going back and like,
you could do either. Well, the thing is, like, the main character is chill. Like, if you think Khan in as the main character,
Okay.
then there it is.
Is he the one soldier guy in the middle of the art?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'll certainly, especially if it's a lot shorter for him, because I know the Steam Boy's a movie, which I'm down to watch a movie. That's kind of why I'm just so hesitant to hop back into anime. Is that I've missed so much, so it's like it's daunting to be like, man, I gotta watch fucking 4 seasons of this shit. Like, God.
Nah. First 2 episodes. It's not a good anime. The Gate.
Okay. No, I just meant like anime in general. Like when people recommend it to me, I'm like, God, there's like so much to catch up on.
No. There's no need for you to be invested in that story. There is a story, but there's no need for you to be invested in it.
Okay, beautiful. That's what I like to hear. Yeah, those are great. I wish I had recommendations for you, but honestly, just look up type fantasy, and there you go. There you.
Yep. I don't need any recommendations. I got myself covered.
I think you have many in the pipeline from just life
For
in
sure.
general, so I think you've already got it covered. But yeah, I don't know, guys. That's been our episode on our dream fantasy settings. Khuon, do you have anything left to tell the people or share with anyone?
That's it. And may your dreams come true, guys.
May your dreams come true, folks. And as always, take it easy.
Bye.